Hello, my little hackmons, and welcome back to Fictosexual Life. Today's topic is, what if your fictional crush already has a significant other in canon? Now, the very first thing I want to say to you about this topic is, it's 100% okay to feel upset. It's okay to feel sad, a little angry, jealous if the character you're crushing on already has a love interest. It's normal, it's natural, it's just human emotion. So from there, what do? Here are some ways that have really helped me. Obviously, this might not work for everyone, so feel free to experiment with different ways of thinking about this. Now, I have a really simple idea, but the problem is that this only works if the love interest is a very minor character that doesn't have much plot relevance or doesn't really appear in the show, movie, book, or game. If you're rewatching, rereading, or replaying something, you can always just skip over the scenes with the love interest if you don't really want to see them. You already know how the story ends, so you're not missing out on anything. Because you don't have to relive an experience that makes you uncomfortable. A really nice way of thinking about it is to think about your crush as rather than a fictional character that's owned by a company or a franchise. Think of them as more of a mythological figure like Dracula or Robin Hood that has many different interpretations. And there's no right or wrong way to think about these characters. For example, some people think of the Grim Reaper as an evil entity, but others see him as a benevolent figure who's just doing the job of nature. Think of that version of your crush that you see on TV and games and books and movies as just one way of interpreting that character. Their original creator may have given them a love interest, but that's just in that creator's version of whatever world this is mythology. And everyone's version of that mythology is slightly different. In your imagination, in your daydreams, in your fantasies, that love interest doesn't have to exist at all. They may have been part of the original creator's vision for a franchise, but they don't have to be a part of your vision. And that brings us to something similar, which is taking the love interest out of the equation. This can be accomplished just with imagining this, with fan art, with fan fiction. If you still want to acknowledge or feel like you just can't get away from the canon love interest, then try imagining scenarios where they aren't together anymore and your fictional crush is with you now. And there are so many ways to imagine this. They broke up, or your crush realized that their sexual orientation doesn't really work with the canon love interest, or they just realize they're not right for each other, or the canon love interest moves away, disappears, dies, whatever kind of story you want to tell. That's why imagination is my most favorite thing in the whole world. It can do anything you command it to. For me personally, because I love writing horror stories, I often write about the love interest dying or having something otherwise terrible happen to them. And in the wake of these tragic accidents, the characters I'm crushing on might feel the need to just move on with their life and try and forget about it, or realize that they never really loved the love interest and it was all superficial. I know this isn't really realistic for most people because it can take years or even more than a lifetime to get over the loss of a significant other, but it's just the way that I write. Maybe you write differently. 'Cause I want to get to the scary stuff as soon as possible. In past, I've had canon love interests get killed by a new love interest that I plan to introduce, or some other way that really fits the story. And in recent years, I've started to experiment with more interesting ways of getting that love interest out of the picture. For example, in the game Final Fantasy XV, Arden, the character that I really loved, did have a canonical love interest named Era, but she canonically dies in game. So I basically created this whole world in my mind revolving around a cult that worshipped Era's spirit in death. Even though it's all about Era, the cult is still led by the new love interest I created for Arden. I made so many cool monsters and characters for that I still think about sometimes, and one of these days I really do want to return to that world. It started as just a simple way to get rid of a love interest I didn't like, but then it grew into something beautiful that I could daydream for hours on end about. An example of one that I've been doing stuff with right now, you may notice that I'm a teensy tiny, just a little bit obsessed with the Scout from Team Fortress 2, and if you've seen the final episode of the cartoon Expiration Date, he has a huge crush on a character named Miss Pauling. Now, when I started writing TF2 stories, I decided to show Miss Pauling a little mercy and not just kill her. Instead, having her be possessed by a demon for the entirety of it. A playful and disturbing sewing-themed demon called Needlepoint. Don't worry, guys, it's just a mask. Sorry, I just love making monsters and wanted to geek out about one for a little bit since I had the chance. You know, it's topical. But I've noticed that after writing these stories, making a few costumes based around it, getting comfortable in them, I kind of started to tolerate the canon love interests a lot more because all I can think of now is my version of them. And for me, it's a great thing that's made me really happy and have a lot of fun. To summarize everything, know that the version of your crush that has a different love interest than you isn't reality, because when you're fictosexual, you can dream up your own reality, and it's unique and beautiful, and it's like no one else's. And that's what makes us special. That's what makes you special.